impact on, the more likely you are to get reporters out to cover that story. So think of it as, if you're going to announce a property tax increase, more people are affected by that. So more reporters are likely to come cover that story than if you are going to announce that you're increasing the fees for a dog license. That will affect a lot of people, but not nearly as many people as will be affected by a property tax increase, okay? Prominence, the more important the people involved in the story are, the more likely the media are to cover it. If a local insurance agent catches a cold, nobody cares. If the president sneezes, the whole world cares, right? Does he have pneumonia? Was he stuttering in his speech? Was he slurring his speech? That was all in the news yesterday. We care. Because he's the president. All of you guys, because of your positions, are considered prominent in your community. So you are automatically newsworthy. And that can work for you or against you. It can work for you because you already have that news value working when you call to pitch a story. But it can also work against you because you're always going to be newsworthy. And everything you do could make the news. Then there is proximity. This one also works in your favor because you're going to contact your local media to get them to cover your stories. So you're not going to pitch everything that's going on in your community to the Courier-Journal or to the Lexington Herald-Leader because it may not have a big enough impact on their audience where they would cover the story. But your local TV station or your local radio station or your local newspaper will cover it because it's in that area and their audiences care about that. And then there's human interest. I skipped conflict. Conflict and controversy. Tension makes good drama, okay? We like drama for some reason. It's good, it makes for good storytelling. And you think about it, it may be negative, but it also can be positive because people want to hear about all sides of a story or an issue or a policy and then be able to decide for themselves what they think about. I said all sides, not both sides, because so many stories are not the yin and the yang. There aren't just two sides to every story. Sometimes there are multiple sides to a story. And so the media and the people, their audiences want to hear as many of those sides as possible. So that's why we like the conflict element. And then there's human interest. People are interested in other people. Okay? We love those rags to riches stories. Okay? We want to hear the good things that people are doing. But TMZ is making a fortune on the fall from grace kind of stories. The important people who come off the pedestal. Okay? And people want to hear about that too. Good, bad, or otherwise. So we love those stories that have a human element. And so anytime when you are pitching a story to the media that you can pitch the human side of something and give that policy or that issue or that decision a human face and tell a human story, you're more likely to get coverage as well. And then finally, there's oddity. Anything that's out of the norm can get covered because it's just not an everyday kind of thing. And the media are always looking for new twists on a mundane story. So, think about, we're in the holiday season. We've probably seen, heard, read every holiday story you could possibly think of. So the challenge for reporters becomes, how do I put a new twist on the same old story? So even if it's a same old story in your community that has nothing to do with the holidays, but it's the same old, we do this every year, or we do this every quarter, or whatever. What kind of spin or twist can you put on it to make it a little bit different so that the media will want to cover that story for you? And I'll give you some examples here. We can go through these kind of quickly, but timeliness. This was a story that was in yesterday's Courier-Journal. Okay, it's timely because it just happened. The guys decided to run against Kim Davis to be the county clerk. So it didn't happen 6 months ago, it didn't happen last month, it happened this week, it ran the paper yesterday. Impact or importance. I chose Harvey Weinstein here because now, this is a big story, nationally and internationally. It affects a lot of people. And when Time Magazine names the #MeToo movement as its Person of the Year, there is an impact and that it's an important story. So he became news. Prominence,
This is just a headline with the president because everything the president does is newsworthy. He's a prominent, whoever's the president is always going to be newsworthy no matter what he or she does. Think of yourselves as kind of the president in your communities. Your positions are making you that important where people are always going to be interested in you. Proximity, it's something that's going on in a local area. Okay, so when the lawyer gets arrested at Pizza Hut, which is kind of funny, when the lawyer gets arrested at Pizza Hut and is brought back to Kentucky, we care about that story. People in other parts of the country probably don't care about that story. We care because he's from here. We've heard about that story for months and months. Now he's captured. It's kind of the quote-unquote conclusion of the story, so we're interested. Conflict or controversy, again, we like the tension, we like the drama, we want to hear all sides of the story. So we're going to care about a police chief who is about to have to answer questions about his sex scandal. Human interest, we like to read about people. Everybody loves kids and puppies. You know, so you see a picture of a kid and he's got a jug of grease, you automatically go, oh wow, wonder what that story's about, and then you're interested in reading how these kids kept all this grease out of the sewers in Lexington. And finally, my favorite story of the week, can't make this stuff up. You have an oddball story, and you're just interested in it because what in the world is the possum doing in the liquor store, and how did he get into the liquor, and how did he get drunk, and what happened, and how did they catch him? You know, you're probably more interested in this story than some of the other ones. Okay, I am. So the oddity part of it, and it's so funny because if you go on the AP Associated Press website or follow AP Oddities on Twitter, they have just odd stories. They have a whole section on their website for odd stories. They have a whole Twitter handle where they just tweet odd stories like this one. So that's how much we like oddball stories. So 2 kinds of news stories. We have what we call public interest stories and what we call merely interesting stories. So public interest stories are stories that have information that affect people's everyday lives. They need this information to make important decisions about things like education, like politics, like healthcare, things like that. They need this information. It's information that they need. Merely interesting is what I call information we want, like the possum in the liquor store. Okay? We don't need that information. That's not going to change our lives. But we liked it. We thought it was funny. We wanted it. So we are interested in these kinds of stories because they're just merely interesting, not because they're going to change our lives. And the media need both kinds of stories. So don't feel as if every time you talk to the media, you have to give them a public interest story. You can just give them a merely interesting story. You can talk to them about maybe somebody who works in your organization who is, doing something fun or cool or unusual, and pitch that as a feature story. It doesn't have to be a hard news story. Oh, do you have to? No, you got it. Okay. It can be something that's just merely interesting. And we also call these things hard news or soft news. Again, the hard news, those are stories that have information that people need. And usually think of these stories being on the front page of the paper or at the beginning of a newscast, whether it's TV or radio, the front page of a website, that kind of thing. Really important stories. Soft news can be more of the merely interesting stories. They're good stories, they're fun stories, they have some information that could be important, but it's not life-changing important. Teachers go on strike, it's front page news story. Okay? A new pool opens up at the Y, or the mayor's office has some renovations going on. It's interesting, but it's not life-changing. Okay? The media might still cover it though. So don't think if it's not, hard-hitting, life-changing news that the media won't cover it. They possibly will. So pitch both kinds. Okay, stories always contain what we call in the business the 5 W's and the H, except I added another H. So we'll talk about what all of these are. The first one is the who. I say the who keeps it real. Okay, the who tells us who's affected, who benefits, who gets screwed. We like to hear about people, so keep that human interest element in mind. The what gives a story its substance, but substance can be very, very dry. If you have a story that's just about the what, it can get boring pretty quickly. Okay, if you call the media and you want to talk about the new sewer system that is going to be put in your city, that's not the most interesting topic ever, okay? I remember the first city council meeting I ever covered, they talked about tax abatement, and I thought I would die. Because it was just dry, dry, dry. There was no human element to it. So remember that you need the what to have substance, but you need the who to make people really care about it and want to read it. When is important because it has to be timely. It's got to be current. Can't be old stuff. And the where is important, and you guys have that working in your favor because the where, it's local, it's close. We care about what's close. But your local media will care about what you care about because you're serving the same audiences. So that's a pretty easy one. The why makes a story meaningful, but sometimes we can't always tell the why. People like to know why, but we aren't always able to either A, know why, or be able to explain why. I'm sure some of you have dealt with the more controversial stories where maybe lawsuits were involved and things like that, and there were parts that you couldn't talk about because of legalities, and the reporters are asking, well, why this and why that, and you just can't talk about it. So that one can be tricky. And then there's the how. And people love how stories. They want to know how, and they want that detailed information. But again, sometimes you can't give it, and also because it's so detailed, sometimes the media can't always cover that because they don't have the time or the space to cover the how. And then there's the which I think is the most important value up here, because the is the so what factor. Why do I care about this story? Why should I read this story? Why should I listen to this story? Why should I watch this story? What's in it for me? So you have to make sure that you can answer that so what? This is why you should care about this story. Otherwise, you might not even capture the media, or if you capture the media, you might not capture their audiences. So always have a so what? This is why you should care about this particular story. Next, why do you want media coverage? Well, you want it because media are powerful, particularly in small communities. They are a conduit to your audiences, your constituents. And so you need them to get that information out to your constituents. You need them to get your information out to your constituents. Think about the power of, people say, oh, the print media is dead. Your older constituents still read. Okay, I can get my students to read anything, but the older audiences still read. So that newspaper is a powerful force in your community to reach the older constituents. You want to reach the younger audience? Go through social media. You guys talked about that this morning. But they're still powerful. Traditional media are still powerful. Local radio and local TV, still powerful. Again, the Courier-Journal and the Louisville TV stations or the Herald-Leader and the Lexington TV stations are not likely to cover all of the things going on in all of the small towns. But your local media will cover what's going on in your community. So that gives them a lot of power. Also, it's a symbiotic relationship. You need them to disseminate that information, but they need you just as much to get the information. That newspaper has pages to fill, that radio station has airtime, that TV station has airtime. They can't just, grab information and grab stuff out of the air. They need to be fed that information. So they need you to provide it. You need them to then, in turn, get that information out to the audiences. So it works hand in hand, and we'll talk about relationship building in a second. So how do you find these folks? Well, here are some websites. The online directories, these are free. You can just put them in your browser and click on, I think they're all already divided by Kentucky, and it pops up. The first one's for radio, the second one is for TV stations, and the third one is for newspapers. So if you don't already know all the media in your area, that's a quick way to find them. Kentucky Press Association, kpanews.com, has all the newspapers in the state, dailies, weeklies, and university papers. Don't discount those university papers. If you have universities in your area, use the college media, because those students actually pay attention to the college media, and it's a good way to reach that younger audience, okay? And those papers are always looking for stories, and they can put a spin on, you know, whatever story it is and how it affects the college students. So don't discount those. Once you know the local media in your area, go to those individual websites. So when you know you have the newspaper and 3 radio stations, then find them, find their websites, and then scroll to the bottom, it's usually at the bottom on the front page, and click something that looks like About Us, that's usually what it says. Click on About Us, and will pop a list of all the people who are working there. So that's how you can find the reporters and the editors who work there. Typically, these sites will not only list their names, but they'll give you their phone numbers and their email addresses. What I suggest you do is make your own directory then. So here are my TV stations, here are my radio stations, here are my newspapers, here are the reporters. Look for the folks who cover your organization. Okay, you probably don't need to get a list of the sports reporters or the entertainment reporters or whatever. You need the list of people who are covering your organization. Make your list in Excel or Word or whatever, have their names, have their email addresses, have their phone numbers handy, so then when you need to reach out to them, you don't have to go back to all these websites and look it up. You already have a document that you created, your own directory. And once you do that, as people come and go, because people will change jobs and new people will come in, you can just update it, okay? The directories are likely to be out of date, but the websites for these organizations should be pretty up to date. So that's what I said, go to the directories and find all the media in your area, then go to the individual websites, and then you can get the up to the minute information on that. These are national directories. I listed them just so you would be aware. These cost money. The other ones on the other page are free, but these are good ones to use if you have the budget to do that, which most people don't. But just be aware that they're out there. Okay, they're not any more likely to be up to date than the free ones from the previous page, but it's just another resource for you. So now that you know who they are and where they are, how do you get them to cover your story? Well, the first thing you need to do is get to know their jobs. So, find out who's covering your organization. Go to their website or go to the publication, read what they're writing about. You can see kind of what their writing style is, you can see what kind of stories they're interested in, and you can get to know them a little bit better. Find out when this reporter is going to be in the office. Stop by, introduce yourself. Start to build that relationship. Maybe if they're not at the office, you can send them an email and introduce yourself. Invite the person to coffee. Ask them to explain to you what their job is. What do you cover? What stories do you like to cover? What kind of stories are you looking for? And most importantly, ask them, how can I make your job easier? Reporters are just kind of lazy, I'll be honest. They will take the low-hanging fruit. And if you can pitch stories to them and you can make their jobs easier because every day they've got to write a story or every day they've got to do a radio report or a TV report, and you can give them those stories and help them out, they will like you, okay? Get to know them personally. So get to know them as a person. When I was a PR person, I had a Rolodex. And on the front side of the card, I had name, whatever publication or TV station or whatever, email address, phone number, etc. On the back of the card, I had information about this person. If I could find out what their hobbies were, or anything about their families, or their birthdays. And I made a note of those kinds of pieces of information because sometimes the back of that card was just as important as the front of that card. So if I had to pick up the phone and call a particular reporter, nobody wants to go. Nobody's claiming any of these numbers.
Do we have Troy Rotter, Michael Hughes, or Jeff Edwards? Jeff Edwards, we'll take you there.
Come on down.
Come on down.
You're the next contestant. So if I had to call a reporter about a story that I wanted to pitch, I didn't just pick up the phone and say, hey Bob, I've got this great story about blah, blah, blah. I could say, hey Bob, how's Johnny doing in basketball? I could start the conversation and make it personal. And, then that reporter, again, you're playing a little psychology here. Psychologically, it's like, oh, well, she actually remembers that we talked about this, and she remembers my family, and that you establish that relationship and that rapport. If I could find out their birthday, I would always send a birthday email or, whatever. But anything to build that relationship. Because studies have shown that people will respond more favorably to people they like. So if you can get the reporters to like you, then they are more likely to not only cover your stories, but probably cover your stories more favorably than if they don't like you, okay? This whole concept of journalists are objective is crap, okay? There's no such thing as objectivity. We all have biases. You just have to recognize that you have them. But sometimes things like, I really like you as a person, and you're friendly, and I like your stories, so I'm gonna be more favorable to you than I am to somebody I don't like. You can't help yourself, you're human, okay? So journalists are human, so get them to like you. All right, next thing, understand the guidelines for dealing with journalists, because that will help you maintain that relationship. You've introduced yourself, you've gone out to coffee, you're pitching stories that are good stories, you made them like you, now what do? Well, first of all, to maintain that relationship, always be honest. Don't lie to the reporter, okay? The minute you lie, it goes downhill from there. Okay, we can all come up with stories, local and national, where the lying and the cover-up is worse than what actually happened in the very beginning. So don't lie, okay? Second, always answer the phone calls when the reporter calls. And if you aren't in your office or you're not by your cell phone or whatever, return that call immediately. Because if you are responsive, again, they will like you more. And this goes for good stories versus bad stories, okay? If you've got something bad going on, it's no surprise when the reporter calls you, right? You know that sooner or later that reporter's gonna call. So don't try to hide and not answer the phone or not respond to email. Go ahead and answer the phone and respond. And if you're not prepared to answer questions because you don't have the information that you need to answer the questions, just say that. Hey Tom, I know what you're calling about, and I'm looking into it. I'm trying to get some information together. What's your deadline? Because I will try to get as much information as I can and get back to you in time for you to make your deadline. Be responsive. That will maintain that relationship. Give the media what they want, not just what you want them to have. So that goes to that, not a good story moment, okay? If you're ducking and dodging when they call about a negative story, you're not giving them what they want, okay? At least be responsive. Even if it means saying, I don't know, I need to get some information together, I need to check on that and get back to you, do that. And then if you say you're going to call them back so they can meet the deadline, call them back, help them meet the deadline, okay? Because if reporters are waiting on you to call them and they're holding their story and you don't call them back, that ruins a relationship as well. So do what you say you're going to do. Whenever you pitch news stories to them, make sure it's actually a newsworthy story. Don't just call about every little thing. Because pretty soon as a reporter, they're gonna, especially if they have one of those spy phones where your name and number pop up, it's gonna be like, oh, it's him again, and he's gonna call me about some stupid idea that we're not gonna cover, and you're wasting time. And again, damaging that relationship that you took time to build. So make sure that what you actually pitch to them is newsworthy. And then finally, establish your ground rules. You've got this great relationship with the reporter and you've built some trust, but always establish the ground rules. Assume everything is on the record unless you specifically discuss otherwise. And as I told the other group, if you are going to go off the record, make sure you know what that means. Does that mean it's for background information? Meaning I'll give you this information, but you can't attribute it to me or use it. You can just explore the information and try to find other sources. Is it not for attribution information, meaning you can use the information, but just don't say it came from me? Or is it completely off the record where I don't want you to use the information, I just want you to know it exists, and it's up to you to go find it, okay? If you don't understand what all that means, go watch All the President's Men, for example. okay? Good way to learn those things. But assume everything is on the record, and as I told the last group, never agree to off-the-record stuff unless you just really, really, really trust that reporter, because it's so easy to get burned that way. As a reporter, I'm gonna work my tail off to try to get you to tell me what you know. But you've got to trust me, okay? You can trust me, I'm trustworthy, you can tell me anything. But every reporter's gonna say that, okay? And you've gotta decide if you really can. And it only takes one time to get burned, okay? Before you learn that lesson, so be very careful about that. And then last, send them the information in the appropriate format. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. You guys have the handout called the Shain 7. If you look on the 4th page, that talks about press releases. Everybody does the top 10. You know, ESPN does the top 10. I decided I don't want to be like everybody else, so I did the 7. I won't go over these in detail because you guys can read them, but I'll hit the highlights. First and foremost, when you send information, always include contact information. Don't assume that, oh, the reporter already knows my phone number and email and all that. What if that reporter is at home and opens your message and wants your phone number, but it's not on there, and doesn't have it in the cell phone or doesn't have it at home? Never assume that. Also, maybe you're the person who has the relationship with the reporter and you're going to send the information, but you're not really the person they should talk to. They need to talk to somebody else. So make sure that that contact name and number is available, okay? Next, always include the date that the information can be released. Typically, it's immediately. You know, you're not going to send out a press release that they can't start talking about right away. But sometimes if you've got like a big announcement that you want to make and you want to give the reporters a heads up, you might do what we call an embargo, where I'm giving you this information, but you got to hold on to it for a couple days. And that goes back to how much do you trust. Okay, if it's something really, really big, do you trust this reporter or these reporters not to tell people? If you don't, then don't release the information until you're ready for it to be released. Because if it gets released too soon, it might, you know, blow up in your face and be a bad situation. Next, always start with your best stuff. What is the most interesting thing, the most interesting angle? Because if you don't put the good stuff in the first paragraph, chances are the good stuff's not going to get read. Okay, when I was a managing editor for a daily paper, I would get hundreds of press release-y type emails a day. To do my job and read all that email, I couldn't read past the first paragraph in most cases. If the first paragraph interested me, then I could keep reading and decide if that's a story we wanted to cover. If you don't capture that person's attention in the very first paragraph, you're sunk. So you've got to get the good stuff up to the top, because if you dump it down in the bottom and bury it somewhere, it's probably not ever going to get read. It's delete, gone. Make sure that in your press release you have the 5 W's and the 2 H's, so that you give them enough information, enough specific information, that they can see why they want to cover the story. But don't get too detailed where, you know, they don't want to cover the story because you've already told them everything. So think of the press release as like whetting their appetite to come cover the story. It's a tease, if you will, so that they'll want to come and report on it. Make sure you check your grammar, spelling, and punctuation. It's just unprofessional if you send out something that's sloppy. If you are addressing your information to a particular reporter, make sure that you spell his or her name correctly. I would never read a press release or an email that I got if they couldn't spell my name. Attention to details, like if you can't even get my name right. I tell students that. I tell students, if you spell my name wrong, I won't read your email. My name's everywhere. It's on your syllabus, it's on the course website, it's on my door. There's no reason for you not to get my name right. Still happens. So pay attention to the details. Make sure that you give factual information and not opinionated information. So don't tell them that they need to come to this fabulous event because you're opening an epic new swimming pool, and use all these wonderful adjectives that are just biased. Just invite them to come to the grand opening of the new swimming pool. Okay, let them decide if it's a fabulous event and if the swimming pool is epic. Okay, don't editorialize on that. When you send the release via email, make sure that you don't send it as an attachment. Write it in Word or whatever program you want, do a copy paste, put it in the body section of the email. Because a lot of times the spam filters will either delete the email that has an attachment because of viruses, or it will strip off the attachment because of viruses. Or if it's like our university email, it will take it to a different system and it will hold it for a couple days, and then you will get an email a couple days later that that says this email is in your email box, you need to check and see if it's spam. And then I'll have to click on that, and if your event is in 2 days and something gets held in the spam protector for 2 days, they don't get it. But the idea is, it doesn't matter if it looks pretty. You don't care about your press release looking pretty, you care about your information getting to the reporters. So put it in the body of that email versus putting it into a really more attractive attachment to the email. Send your press release out at least a week in advance.
Claude Christensen?
Because especially at these smaller outlets, they don't have a huge staff. And if you want them to cover your event, you need to make sure that they plan for it and they know what's going on. So send it out about a week in advance. A couple days later, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I sent a press release a couple days ago, did you get it? And if they say, yes, got it, then great, hope we see you there. If they say, no, I didn't get it, then you can resend it, however that works. But after you've called once and they said, yeah, we got it, we're gonna try to be there, don't call every day or 3 times a day. It just looks desperate, okay? You don't wanna look desperate. So if they say they got it, they'll make the decision and you move on. And then finally, only send press releases to the media folks who are going to actually cover your event or your story. You don't need to blanket the whole newspaper, the whole radio station with your information and send to everybody. That's why you created that contact list that we talked about earlier. You're only going to send it to the folks who might actually cover the story. So then the information is targeted to those folks. Think of it as the rifle approach versus the shotgun approach, okay? Now, when you get them to your event or your press conference or whatever it is, what do you do with them? The first thing I suggest is you, first of all, give them really good directions on how to get there so they don't get lost, and then have someone there to greet them at the event, especially if they're showing up at the front door and you're going somewhere else for the press conference or the event. Have someone there to meet them, say hello, I see you're here for the whatever event it is, let me tell you how to get there, that kind of thing. The other thing you need to think about is giving the media that greeter's name and cell phone number. Don't give them an office number, don't give them an email address. If that person's a greeter, they're not in the office. So give them a cell phone number so if the media get lost, then they have that person's number and they can say, hey Stacie, I'm looking for your event, I think I'm in the wrong parking lot or whatever. And they have someone to reach out to. Make sure that you have someone who's going to talk at the event and you have some kind of visual. The TV folks need visual, the print folks love to have a visual, so you have to give them something to show. And also for the radio folks, you need to give them the audio that they need. If you have pictures, illustrations, drawings, anything like that that you can provide, it also helps. And for the TV folks, if you have B-roll where you've gone out and you've shot video of something that's related to that topic and you can give them extra footage, they really appreciate that. And it helps you out because now that 30-second story might become a 60-second story because they have more video to show and they can talk about more of the story. And then finally, think about consider streaming your event live. I don't know if you guys talked about Facebook Live in social media this morning. Think about doing something like that because if the folks in your town are covering something else, with Facebook Live, it stays on the site. If you use Periscope or one of the other ones, it's live while it's going on, and then once you drop the feed, it's gone. With Facebook Live, it would archive it on your organization's page, so if they couldn't watch it while it was going on, then they can go back to your website or your Facebook page, and they can see the video and watch it there. The TV folks can capture it, the newspaper folks can capture it as well. So it's a good way to let them cover it after the fact if they've got other things going on at that time. Also, when you are establishing those relationships with the reporters, ask them, what are your work hours? And when are your deadlines? Because you don't want to schedule a press conference or an event, A, when the reporter's not working, or B, when it's right up against deadline. So if you notice for television, most press conferences occur between 10 and 2. You don't usually get a 5 o'clock press conference unless the media plan to cover it live. If they're already prepping for the nightly newscast or the nightly radio broadcast, they're not going to cover your event or your press conference. So schedule it in the middle where they can still cover it. Questions about any of that stuff? All right, well, let me give you some examples. Hopefully nobody's here from the governor's office because I'm going to give you a bad example from the governor's office. And I guess my Sharpie and my copier weren't dark enough. I tried to redact to protect the guilty, but I don't think I did a very good job.
Way too wordy.
Well, as press releases go, it's not the longest press release I've ever read, but they could probably made it briefer. You're a reporter, you get this. Are you going to cover this story? Why not?
It's just information.
It's just information, it's not news. Okay. First of all, have we humanized it at all?
No.
No. Okay, we've quoted the governor and we've quoted this director, but have we talked to anybody who's in mine safety? Have we talked to a miner who's ever been rescued? You know, there's no meat here. I mean, it's another, you know, the governor declares another day. Oh, fantastic. He's going to declare 364 more of them. Okay, so it's not news. So you've got to have something that's newsworthy in there. And this one just doesn't have anything that's going to make you care. It doesn't have the hump. It doesn't have the so what. Okay, great. It's Mine Safety Day on October 30th. What does that have to do with me? Why should I, as the average person, care about that? Okay, here's another one. I didn't redact all the names on this one, so I didn't protect all of the guilty, but it's a national news release, so it's not so bad, I guess. And tell me what you think of this one.
But could you take this release, if you could give the governor, say you went out and done some background research on mine safety and so forth like that, and
They could. I mean, it's fodder, it's fair game. If you declare that this is Mine Safety Day, if I'm an enterprising reporter looking for a story, I could go out and say, well, it's Mine Safety Day, what's your record on mine safety? And what are you really doing to make mine safer and make the job safer for the miners? Absolutely. And particularly if you're the governor and you don't have a good relationship with the media, not that we know anybody like that, but it can be tougher.
We're sitting at a national level.
This looks like an advertisement.
Kind of looks like an advertisement. Are your eyes about to glaze over on that? Holy moly, you send that to me as a journalist. I went into journalism because I don't like numbers. And you just sent me a press release that's number after number after number and statistic. Okay, I don't need to know all that. Okay? The meat and potatoes of that whole thing is the first paragraph. You already told me that Louisville gas prices are dropping at a rate that's better than the national average. That's all I really need to know if I'm a reporter in the Louisville metro area. So all of this other stuff is just gobbledygook. And it's where we said, you could have too much information, so I said be specific, but don't tell them everything. So that's just too much, okay?
Would you take, I mean, if you got this right here, would you not dissect it yourself, or you want them to, I mean, how do you, I mean, sometimes you,
I'm a busy reporter.
well, but some
And if
people
I
say-
need a story, I'll take the time to dissect it. If I've got 2 other stories, but I think this is worthy of it, then it'd be like, man, why couldn't you all just localize it for me? And dissect it for me, because I don't really have the time to do that. And if I do, it's going to be pretty brief, And again, the meat and potatoes is that first paragraph.
So you like, as a reporter wants it short and to the point.
Yes. And again, get that so what factor. right up front, and don't belabor the point and give them a bunch of other garbage that they don't need to know. Yes, sir.
And if you don't give them all the information, then they decide what they want to say. Not
Well, true. You give them enough information, you're just whetting their appetite to come cover the story, but you aren't giving them too much that they, okay, well, I don't even need to cover it. I can just write something from this press release. Or you don't give them enough information where they're like, I don't even know what this story is about, so I'm not going to go cover it, and I'm not going to pick up the phone and call you. That would be easy. And sometimes, again, locally they might do that, but at the larger media operations, they've got too many other stories and too many other things going on. But the reason that you're sending out that press release anyway is because you want to tell your story. Okay, and I always tell people, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And they're probably not going to tell it the same way you would. So you're sending out the press release so that you get to tell your own story. Just make sure that you're telling it in the right way, in the way you want it to be told. Come on down.
I already have to go first, but not last.
One more after you say. You see number one?
That's the number one.
I guess, yeah. Conflict and controversy right here. Who gets to be interviewed next? Film at 11. All right. And then this last one is a good press release. I'm not saying it's a great press release. I'm also not saying it's a good press release because my name is on it. But I will tell you why I think it's a good press release after you get a chance to take a look at it.
We get one more.
Oh, sure. See, told you I was a journalist, not a mathematician. Don't do numbers well, can't count. There you go. Okay, a good press release is a press release that accomplishes its goal. It gets you the coverage that you want. Okay, in this particular press release, the meat and potatoes of it, what was newsworthy, what the hook or the angle was that we were going to have 2 World War II veterans live tweeting on D-Day, on the 70th anniversary of D-Day. I had done the research and found out that no honor flight had gone out where the veterans were using Twitter and live tweeting on their trip. And so we set up 2 accounts for two veterans, and then another guardian and I were with the veterans all day long, and we were tweeting what they were talking about, what they were saying, took their pictures, that kind of thing. And we pitched it to the local press, and we ended up not only getting the local folks to cover us, but we made the front page of USA Today. We also got great coverage in Stars and Stripes, plus all of the local and regional media here. So it's a good press release because it accomplished the goal, which was to get media coverage of the event and to get people to follow these guys on Twitter. So, what questions do you guys have? How can I help you? Are there any secrets or tricks or things that you want to know that you guys maybe haven't already talked about in other sessions today?
How is it that newspaper, in particular newspaper print, is, and I know why they do it, but they take something and they skew it completely different than what it
Well,
is.
particularly for the websites. For the websites now, it's all about clicks and getting people to click on story. And you guys have probably heard the term called clickbait, where they write a headline or something that's so compelling, and it may have very little to do with the actual story, but the headline, sounds salacious and juicy and gossipy and interesting, and when you click on it, you find out that it has nothing really to do with it because they want you to click on that story. The Courier-Journal, for example, they monitor all the time what's going on the website. They have people who just monitor the analytics for the website. And if a story isn't getting any clicks, they will move it around on the website. They will change the headline. They want people, they're trying to capture attention. So that's why the headline may be a slant, or on the website it may have a particular placement or slant because they want someone to read it. So they're trying to get readers and get viewers to the website.
Now, how much authority does the reporter have over the editor?
Almost none. Yeah, the only time a reporter would have the authority is if the editor is trying to make some changes to a story and the reporter is just like, whoa, hey, that's, that wasn't the quote, that wasn't the angle, that wasn't what happened, I was there, you weren't, kind of thing. But the editor makes the decisions about, where it's placed in the headlines and those kinds of things, yeah.
So he's the editor of the, and when you give him a report, he can skew it the way he wants it to read, is that?
Well, the editor would go through and, edit the story for, all the basic stuff like style, grammar, spelling, punctuation, blah, blah, blah. If there are questions that you didn't answer, hey, there's a hole in the story, can you help me fill it in, kind of thing. But then, yeah, the reporter doesn't usually write the headline or place the story. Now, at small papers, they may wear both hats, but at larger papers and usually daily papers, there's somebody who's editing the story who didn't write the story, and the person who is editing is the one doing the headline and placing it.
I wrote a column for our small town home newspaper for 15 years, just a human interest column telling stories. And the title of my column was the most important thing to me. It set the tone, it explained what it's going to be about. We had one editor that came through and they had a penchant for just always changing the title. And it didn't even make sense. It had nothing to do with the story. They would come up with what they thought it should be. And that was the most frustrating thing ever. When you write a column and they change your title.
And it has nothing to do with anything.
Nothing.
I always say an editor should make the story better. I mean, that's the editor's job. Okay, if you get a good editor, then you look good, because the editor's name's not on the story, it's your name. But when they change it and they make you look bad, then it's frustrating. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I learned as a managing editor for a small daily newspaper, there are two things you don't touch. The first, and I touched both of them, and I paid price for it. I got nasty emails and phone calls forever. Don't change where you put the TV guide and the TV schedule for people, because they go berserk over that. And Lord help you if you change the obituaries, which I did. Because I found out those are the two things. I could have changed almost anything else. I moved the paper from an afternoon publication to morning publication. I didn't hear a peep out of anybody. But man, when I moved the TV listings and I changed the obituaries, Lord have mercy, you would have thought that I had changed the world. So.
What's your take on pros and cons on utilizing social media to your media releases, and allow the media to extract from that what they so desire to cover?
I think you need to use both. I mean, I know one of my best friends here in town is a news director at one of the TV stations, and he just cannot stand it when people just post their news releases to like Facebook or Twitter, because they're easy to miss. I think it's fine to put them on social media, but also email them to the media outlets as well. Because you don't want them to miss, well, I put it on Twitter, I put it on Facebook. Okay, well, there's not somebody monitoring your Facebook page or your Twitter feed 24/7, so do both. Because the good news is, if you put it out on social media, you're gonna capture more than just the media folks, you're gonna capture a lot of other people too, but make sure that you target it to those media people as well, because if you want them to cover your story, that's how you get them there. So, but I think social media is a powerful tool, especially if you guys are trying to reach your younger constituents. They're unfortunately they're not reading anything. So
I can't speak for the rest of them, but most of us, as mayor, I don't really try to, I don't really try to cultivate a relationship. It's just, to me, it's kind of part of our operation. But, we have radio, and Richmond doesn't have a TV, so, but we have.
Lexington Market?
Yeah, it's the Lexington Market, but that media does a good job of reporting for us. I mean, we were nice to them and all that stuff. But, I mean, I don't know, unless we've got a press release where I gotta get a time or something, that would be it. But they come to us. I mean, are you encouraging us to
Yeah, I mean,
Call them.
yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, if you've got a good story idea, get them back, call them and tell them
This
you
is
want
gonna be
to
a good
cover.
story right here.
Yeah.
Ready, last one.
Last but not least. Yeah, don't wait for them to come to you. If you've got good stories, hard news or soft news, pitch it to them. Send them the email, pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, we've got blah, blah, blah going on, and, we think this is really interesting, and here's why it's interesting, and see if they'll come out and cover it. It doesn't hurt, because again, they're always looking for stuff. They need information to fill that airtime and to fill that space in the paper. So they need you as much as you need them. And the other thing that I mentioned in the other group was have these stories, we call them evergreens, meaning there's really no time limit. It doesn't matter if they cover the story this week or next week. It's kind of a feature-y type story, because what you don't want to happen is you cultivate this relationship, you get a good rapport going with that media person, and the media person calls you and says, hey, I need a story for today, really don't have anything going on, what have you got? The last thing you want to say is, I got nothing. Okay, pitch them one of these feature-y stories that you've got in your hip pocket and say, oh, well, we've got a city employee and he has this really interesting hobby and he collects harmonicas, or whatever it is that you can make interesting, and pitch that story. Because then you just gave them something on a news day when that reporter had absolutely nothing and was scrambling to try to find something. But have a few of those kind of tucked away so you don't have to say, I got nothing. Because if they call you and you have nothing this time, the next time they're gonna call somebody else. So always be ready for that phone call.
How do you combat being in between media markets? I mean, we're between Lexington and Cincinnati, too far from Louisville. Lexington, none of the three markets cover anything unless it's national newsworthy, of course. Is there any way to get them to you easier? I mean, we don't have a lot of news that goes on, impeachment of mayor or whatever. It's the last time I think they've been in town.
And when they are in town, you really don't want them in town. It's always,
I run to them instead of away from them.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's where maybe doing some of your events like on Facebook Live, where if you're too far, you're too far away for them to come to you or whatever, then you can say, hey, we're going to stream this event and this is what time we're going to start the stream, and then they can go to social media and get it that way. Again, work smarter, not harder, and for them, it's an easy, low-hanging fruit kind of thing that, oh, well, yeah, we could probably give them 30 seconds or whatever on this story because we can pull the feed off of Facebook Live. I would try that. Yeah, that's tough unless you just have a super compelling story. For television, you have to really make them want to come out and cover it.
Maybe you've already addressed it, but the only thing I get frustrated about is when you do a radio interview or a newspaper interview, and they just take a snippet of the lengthy thing that you said. Sometimes it's really misrepresented also.
Yeah,
How do you deal with that? What do you do?
Don't give them lengthy stuff. Talk in 15-second sound bites. Because if you talk for 3 minutes, they're going to cut 15 seconds. And it can be 15 seconds that they can take out of context. But if you only give them 15 seconds, then they only have 15 seconds to work with. And it's a lot harder to cut it down to 10 than it is to cut 2 minutes down to 15. And, stay on your talking points. If you've got key messages that you want to get across, talk about those over and over again, because then they have no other choice but to cover those key messages because that's all you've talked about. You haven't given them anything else. So do you guys want to see some humorous, don't do this?
Oh, yeah, let's see.
No. Let's see, what do we got? Oops. All right, press conference with Tom Brady. He was being interviewed about Deflategate, which I'm sure most of you guys know what that is. Probably don't want to be standing in front of a commercial billboard for something called Flexball when you're talking about Deflategate. I know it's the Gillette product and they named the stadium, but just a bad image to be standing up there talking about how we didn't deflate footballs and you've got Flexball all over behind you. Also, don't be the president of MSNBC and shoot a video that you are going to send out to the media and put on your social media and have CNN on the TV behind you. Not a good visual whatsoever. And then last but not least, and I can show you guys this video if you really, really want to see it. If you were Sarah Palin, then governor of Alaska, and you just went to had a ceremony at a turkey farm, pardoning the Thanksgiving Day turkey, do not do a stand-up interview where the guy is killing the turkeys on live television. And it's a great video, and I love the video. This guy's, he's looking at the camera the whole time. He's like, hey, this is my moment. I got my 15 seconds of fame right here, man. And what kills me is the reporter doing the interview and the camera person had to see this was going on. Why somebody didn't go, you know what, this backdrop is just all wrong. We just did a turkey pardon and now we're gonna kill a bunch of turkey. Nobody moved. They just kept doing the interview, and the interview went on for like 6 minutes.
And it was the actual turkey that she just pardoned.
Let's see.
I don't know if that's the actual turkey. He kills multiple turkeys during the interview. There's not just one turkey, this is several turkeys. So you're like, really? You know, was anybody thinking while this was going on? And when they showed it on MSNBC, they blurred it so you couldn't see the turkey dying. But there's unedited footage where you can see the turkeys, which is what they were actually showing as it was live. So. Huh? You can see it.
It's going in some type of device, isn't it?
First, and then it goes again.
My mother snapped her head off. Oh, it's so
Yeah, it seems a little more, look at this, it's some type of device.
You know too much about killing turkeys for me.
No, I don't know, I'm
There's
my
a
shoulder.
turkey by the day, we'll just have a picture there too.
Oh, he is loving it. He is thinking that he has.
Because change may not all have the same values and convictions and positions and policies, so just a greater appreciation, I think, for what other candidates go through. You know, it's pretty brutal, that the time consumption there and the energy that has to be spent in order to get out and about with a message on a national level. Great appreciation for other candidates who have gone through this, but also just a great appreciation for this great country. There's so many good Americans who are just desiring of their government to kind of get out of the way and allow them to grow and progress and allow our businesses to grow and progress. So great appreciation for those who share that value. And it was a blast. Every day was just a blast out there on the trail.
Yeah, I know. Because you're more interested in the guy with the turkey. Yeah. Yeah, she could be saying she can see Russia from her kitchen window. We don't care.
The price of oil that has plummeted so greatly and reining in the growth of government. And,
He'll be back. Just wait.
Plans like that have to do with helping to govern this state and building this team that is continually being built to provide good service to Alaskans. So in my role as governor, that's what my plans are all around. You know, thankfully, we're in a good.
There we go again. And it goes on for. No, it's a new one. No.
$20 a barrel of oil that some lawmakers wanted to spend. We were warning them that.
So, anyway, you can just go to YouTube. You can go to YouTube and find that. But you know, sometimes you just have to go. Really? You know, was anybody using their brain that day? I'll wrap it up because I know you guys have one closing session to go to. I have cards up here. If I run out, I'm happy to go back to my office and get more. Feel free to take one. Reach out to me if there's ever anything I can do to help you. I know in this morning's introduction, Mr. Manasseh talked to you guys about Bellarmine having a student-run strategic communication agency. I advise that student group. So if you can think of projects, videos, websites, social media planning, anything like that where the students could help you, please feel free to reach out because I'm happy to do that. I have 21 students in the agency this coming semester, so I have lots of students who need lots of experience and lots of projects. The work is free. We only do nonprofit work, so you don't have to worry about having a budget for us. The only thing that we ask is that the students get to use it in their portfolios and they get to put it on their agency website, which is housed under the Bellarmine main website. So you get free work from students and they get good experience in portfolio pieces.